This is Straight No Chaser Talk Radio. We're just getting started. Straight No Chaser Talk Radio.
He's drinking that with no chaser.
Welcome to Straight No Chaser. So grab a glass and join your hosts, your girl and BZ, Thin Bad, and the Chief. Welcome to Straight No Chaser, where we never dilute the issues, we only serve the hard stuff. It's the Chief, and I'm here this evening with Thin Bad.
Hey, how are you?
All right, doing well, Thin Bad. And of course, tonight, in the background, you hear the unmistakable Fox Sports theme. And of course, I have to put that disclaimer out there. We don't own the rights to that theme music, but it's so appropriate that we have the Fox theme music in the background. And when we're talking about high school sports, as you know, every high school athlete and their parents hope that they're going to see the image of their son or daughter in a professional sports uniform at some point, after all the Pee-wee leagues and all the other things that they've done over the years to get to that level of professionalism. And of course, the quest for that dream normally begins at a young age. Normally, the young person is in the Pee-wee league or in gymnastics. Then after several years of gymnastics, they in Pee-wee league and Pee-wee baseball and all those types of things, then it's off to high school. And that's when things get a lot more serious. Football. Let's talk about football, for example. When you're talking football with high schoolers, normally that they're looking at that chance of making it to a big-time school, then to the NFL. Basketball. Go to college, or most importantly, get recruited right to the NBA or the WNBA. Gymnastics. The quest there is to get to the Olympics. But whatever the sport, whether it's football, basketball, gymnastics, lacrosse, track and field, there's always an end game. There's always that next level that the parents and the athlete hope that they achieve. The fame, the fortune, the recognition, and all the trappings that come with that. However, the sacrifices are huge, but the allure of fame and riches makes it a worthwhile endeavor to some. So tonight, we want to talk a little bit about high school athletes. Are we pushing them too hard? Are the programs pushing them too hard so that they can get those riches, so they can have the fame, they can have the fortune, the possible endorsement deals, all the trappings that come with fame and fortune with athletes? And tonight, to help us discuss this and kind of dissect it, is a man that knows a lot about sports. He is a broadcaster where football is king. And, of course, I'm talking about Ryan Adams. Ryan is a broadcaster with Town Talk Sports in El Paso, Texas, where, again, sports is king. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thank you, Chief. It's a pleasure. And thank you for having me on your show.
Yes, sir. And of course, it's great to have you on the show tonight, Ryan. And we really appreciate you being on with us this evening, because we kind of want to talk about high school athletes. And it's so ironic that we have you on the show tonight, because you come from a place where you work in a place where football absolutely is king. Where, Friday nights, I'm sure that the streets are empty because they know that folks are going to be playing that high school ball, and they just put a lot into it. So before we get started, let's talk a little bit about the football programs in your city.
Well, here in El Paso, football is king, but it's not at the fever pitch that you would find in some of the smaller towns throughout West Texas. I'm talking about the Permian Basin, Midland, Odessa. If anybody's familiar with Friday Night Lights, of course, Friday Night Lights was based on Odessa Permian, and there are multiple state championships that they won in the late 80s and early 90s.
Sure.
But be that as it may, football is still serious business here in West Texas and El Paso in particular. Well, of course, being from Baltimore originally, it's nothing like what it is in Texas.
Okay.
I was exposed to it very early. Like, for example, high school homecoming. We grew up in Baltimore. We were never – homecoming was never a high school event. That was a college event. But here, being the homecoming king and queen in the court and the mums that are the size of hubcaps, kids walking around with these mums hanging around their necks, it's a different phenomenon. And it's almost very hard to describe. You almost have to be here to experience it. But the stadiums are usually very full, and I get to do play-by-play. I have an analyst. As a matter of fact, my analyst played offensive line for Burgess High School, and Burgess is where Aaron Jones went to high school. Eventually, he went to University of Texas El Paso. Now he's playing for the Green Bay Packers. Sure. And last time I checked, he had 14 touchdowns so far this year. So
wow.
He's one of those athletes that they talk about on Sunday afternoons, which is what nearly every high school football player strives to be. They want to be there on Sundays. But you look at the number of high school athletes, and you look at the number that go on to college to play, and then out of that group that play in college, eventually those that are either drafted or undrafted free agents, it's lonely at the top. I mean, the percentages get real small real quick.
Sure.
So the way it goes here in Texas, once we crown our district champions, they go east to the Permian Basin to play those kids.
Okay.
And we usually end up losing in that first round.
Sure.
And then those champions of the Permian Basin advance, and they go a little further east to the Metroplex, Dallas-Fort Worth. And then that's when the football teams in the Dallas-Fort Worth area hand it to them.
Okay.
So the center of gravity for high school sports, for high school football, at least in Texas, is the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. It's Houston. It's Austin. I mean, I've been in stadiums that look like NFL stadiums.
Okay. Well, this is an interesting topic, and I want to go back to something you said in a little bit. But Ryan, when you look at the major programs that are out here, just a few of the teams that are big time. You got Mater D in California, St. John Bosco in California, Duncanville out there where you are in Texas, North Shore in Houston, where Katy in Texas. You've got Bishop Gorman out here in Vegas, Chandler in Arizona, St. Joseph Prep in Philadelphia, St. John's in D.C., Gonzaga in D.C. And these are just the football programs. And
don't forget St. Francis in Baltimore.
Oh yeah, well, absolutely. And with the controversy that they had, and so when you look at all of these powerhouse football teams to the point now where they're actual rankings, just like the college leagues, what does it take for those young people to get into a program like that? I mean, what you're around those high school football players. What is the expectation, if you will? Let me put it that way. What's the expectation when that kid comes to a powerhouse school in Texas or Bishop Gorman or Gonzaga that kid has to have in order to even get a look?
Well, from a team standpoint, of course, the expectation is to win a state championship.
Okay.
I think what's important and it's something that we don't do very well here in El Paso, is season conditioning. I mean, those kids that play in the Permian Basin and Odessa and Midland, they live in the weight room. So you're expected to be in top physical condition, of course. And there are no days off. I mean, you're a football player pretty much 24/7. When the season's over, the off-season conditioning program begins.
Okay, and that's a great point. Great point, Ryan.
Yeah.
And now with that in mind, so let's say that I am a 15, 16-year-old football player, and we're not going to ignore the other sports that have the same demands: basketball, swimming, gymnastics, and others. We'll get to a few of those, women's gymnastics, women's basketball, and so forth. But when you're a 15 or 16-year-old athlete and you're spending the time that it takes to get to school or to practice in the morning, I know these teams have 2-a-days and 5-a-days or whatever else they have. How does that impact the social development of that child? Well, let's just start there, because all I know is football. So I get up at 5 a.m. I'm at school by 5:45. I'm on the practice field until the bell rings for homecoming at 7, let's say, and I'm in class. Then after school, I get about 20, 25, 30 minutes to change up. Then I'm back in the weight room. I'm back on the field until about 8 o'clock. I'm getting home at 9, getting something to eat. How does that impact them? And is that worth it?
It doesn't leave room for a lot of anything else. Of course, your job is to remain scholastically eligible. So absolutely, you got to pay attention to the academic side of the house, and everything else revolves around the gridiron. Social development. I mean, all of your relationships revolve around football. I mean, you probably spend more time with the football team than you do with your own family. It's a culture that is just because I never played any high school athletics whatsoever. I was a bookworm.
Okay,
didn't play football or anything at all. I guess but it definitely, for the ones that are really serious about pursuing football after the college, once they matriculate to college and go on, hopefully to go on to the pros or the Arena League or the Canadian League, it doesn't leave a lot of time for anything else.
Sure.
I would say that most of the kids here in El Paso are focused on their academics.
Sure.
We don't have a whole lot of Division I kids playing NCAA football right now. For most of these kids, the last time they step on the field as seniors will be in just a couple of weeks.
Well,
so
we
don't.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I'm glad you said that. When you're talking about, D1 and all that kind of stuff. And before we go any further, let me remind our listeners, you can give us a call at 702-425-4713. 702-425-4713, and we'd love to hear from you. But Ryan, getting back to what you were saying, just in terms of the amount of commitment that it takes, as you are moving through the sports scene in Texas, and you have the opportunity to speak to parents, what is the driving force behind the parents? Because, you see parents in the stands, they get into it more than the coaches, to the point where we see the videos every once in a while, the parents get into fights and all kinds of other ridiculous things, Pee Wee League and all that kind of stuff. But what is it when you're talking to the parent that makes the parent say, hey, I got to get Johnny here by 5 o'clock, or I have to get Susie to swim practice by 3 a.m? What is it that's driving both of them, in your opinion?
In my opinion, well, there's two groups of parents. You have the parents that are basically living vicariously through their kids, and they push them to the point where, they can't push them anymore. And then you have the parents that basically tell the kids, look, if this is what you want to do, that's fine, but don't think that you're doing this for me. You've got to do this for yourself. And if this is something that you don't want to do, then that's fine. So, but I've been exposed to both types of parents, and fortunately here in El Paso, the parents, a lot of the parents that I've talked to are pretty level-headed. They're not these, Uber parents, or these, your typical the parents that have to talk to the coach about how much playing